What happened in episode 7 of season 2 of House of the Dragon? What does it mean for the finale, and how does it compare to the book? Let's take a look. Hi everyone, this is Robert. Welcome to In Deep Geek. On this channel we cover George R. R. Martin's World of Ice and Fire in depth, as well as The Lord of the Rings and The Witcher. Welcome. And this is your spoiler warning, both for this episode and what happens next in the books. We've reached the penultimate episode of the season, and the storylines and character arcs are starting to draw together. Over in Harrenhal, Daemon's character development side quest seems largely complete. Last time, he asked Alice Rivers for help, and now, as if by magic, the political logjam in the Riverlands is over. Young Oscar Tully is the new Lord Paramount after his grandfather's death, and though he claims inexperience, and to be clear he is inexperienced, he puts on a pretty good show of asserting his own control over his new vassals and putting Daemon in his place. The power shift is clear. Oscar calls Daemon loathsome to his face, insists on calling him prince rather than king, and forces him to behead Willem Blackwood, who committed those atrocities for him. Daemon is forced to suck it up if he wants that army, and he does. In a few short minutes, Oscar Tully wins the respect of the Riverlords, and Daemon is left in no doubt that the Riverlords give their allegiance to Rhaenyra and Oscar rather than to him personally. Daemon has his army, but it is a humbling experience for him. And he has time for one more vision to underline this. His brother Viserys asks him if he still wants the crown for himself. Not for the first time in the show, the camera cuts away before we hear how Daemon responds, so that uncertainty will continue into next episode, but I think the implication is clear here. Daemon arrived at Harrenhal thinking he was best suited to be king, and with at least half a thought that he might sit on the Iron Throne himself. He emerges humbled. Let's see whether that lasts. Meanwhile, we see Rhaenyra confront Adam of Hull, who was chosen by Seasmoke last episode. She demands to know who he is and what he wants, and he chooses not to admit his parentage. Remember, he's Corlys's son, but proactively bends the knee anyway. Through most of this season, we've been wondering what the implications are here for dragon law, given that Laenor, Seasmoke's previous rider, is secretly still alive on the show. It seems we're probably not going to be told exactly, though Rhaenyra clearly doesn't think there's an issue and admits that she now doesn't really understand about how dragon bonding works at all. So in show canon, I guess we have to assume that if a rider sets aside their dragon, that dragon can move on. In this case, Seasmoke clearly missed Laenor, so chose the next best thing, Laenor's half-brother. However, Corlys doesn't acknowledge Adam as his son even then. Perhaps he's ashamed, and we're left to wonder what might have happened had either of them recognised their familial ties publicly. Would Rhaenyra have tried to find other members of House Velaryon before launching her open recruitment campaign? Probably. Anyway, they didn't, and Rhaenyra is easily prompted by Mysaria to shift her search to bastard children or grandchildren of Targaryens. It's hard to overstate how big a shift this is in that culture. Nobles like Lord Celtigar clearly think it is just not right for lowborns to hold so noble a role. The Dragon Keepers think it is an abomination and storm out, refusing to have anything to do with it. And Jace's intervention is also interesting. In the book, he was the driving force behind this idea, but here he seems understandably wary of the fact that his own claim as Rhaenyra's heir is based on the lie that he is Laenor's son, a claim questioned on account of his looks, which are very strong, but has always been supported by the fact that he is a dragon rider, thus proving in people's eyes that he is a true-born Targaryen. But if you allow Targaryen bastards to ride dragons, that undermines his position quite a lot. Why should Rhaenyra's bastard son inherit rather than someone else with a dragon who looks more Targaryen and claims to be the bastard of an earlier king? Rhaenyra doesn't really have an answer to that, other than short-term pragmatism, a desire to end the war quickly, and a repeated assertion that it is ordained by the gods in some way. Even more significantly than all that, this is a complete change in House Targaryen's position for more than 2 centuries, and that of Valyria for millennia before that. Only those in certain houses can ride dragons. In Westeros, House Targaryen has had the monopoly on riding dragons. Imagine if other families had access to dragons. What would set the Targaryens apart then? And as will surely increasingly be asked, how can you trust these new dragon riders? You are handing immense power to people whose background and character you know nothing about. This is a huge risk, but this is the new Rhaenyra, taking advice from Mysaria rather than her council, and taking her own lead. So, despite all these reservations from those around her, she goes ahead and posts the advert in King's Landing for potential dragon riders. And again, security here in King's Landing is so lax. Another agent of Rhaenyra's sneaks into the city. Elinda Massey wanders around in a very red cloak, talking to Targaryen bastards, and perhaps 30 or more silver-haired hopefuls sneak out, despite the city apparently being on lockdown. Are we to believe that Larys's spies knew nothing about all of this? More on that angle a bit later. Ulf and Hugh obviously both put themselves forward. Ulf seems less keen than we might think, adding to the suspicion that maybe he's overstated his Targaryen heritage, but he's pressured into it. And Hugh, it seems, is the son of Sarah Targaryen, the daughter of Jaehaerys and Alicent, and brother to Balon, so uncle to Viserys and Daemon. She was caught up in a scandal back then and ended up in a pleasure house in Lys and then Volantis in Essos. We're told that she did have children, and Hugh seems to be one of them. He's kept this a secret even from his wife, but now the chance to claim his Targaryen heritage has come along and he can't pass it by. His child has sadly died, and he could do nothing about it. But if he had a dragon, he could protect his wife from anything. Rhaenyra's plan here seems minimal, in line with her newfound uncertainty about how dragon bonding works. After a brief pep talk, she summons Vermithor, says quite how dangerous he is, then exits, telling the hopefuls that it's up to Vermithor to choose its rider. Vermithor chooses to burn or eat most of them, but when Hugh stands up and shouts at Vermithor rather than running screaming like the others, Vermithor chooses him. Why? Well, Vermithor's last and only rider was King Jaehaerys, whose broken relationship with his daughter Sarah, Hugh's mother, was clearly a huge heartbreak to him. So perhaps it's that familial thing again, or a remnant of Jaehaerys' loss living on in Vermithor. Ulf, meanwhile, gets swept off the platform and wanders the massive caves by himself, before stumbling into Silverwing's lair, and Silverwing chooses him. Why? Well, if Ulf is right about his parentage, this is his grandmother's dragon, and perhaps Silverwing is lonely, or perhaps it was something to do with him uncovering that clutch of eggs. I suspect this one will be left even more vague. Whatever the reasons, Rhaenyra now has her dragon riders. They will probably need some training. Fingers crossed for a training montage next episode, but Rhaenyra is now increasingly looking to go on the offensive. Even if you count Dreamfire, there are only 2 dragons defending King's Landing. Rhaenyra now has 6 with riders on Dragonstone. So Daemon has his army and Rhaenyra has her dragon riders. Surely now Team Black can go on the offensive. Oh, and I say 6 dragons for Team Black. The numbers are changing all the time. There's still also Daemon and Caraxes, of course, and while the youngest members of Team Black are getting that ship to Pentos with their 2 hatchlings and 4 dragon eggs, Rhaena seems to have left them and headed out into the wild to search for that wild dragon. And on the other side of the equation, we learn that Prince Daeron down in Oldtown is now riding his dragon to Sarion. Team Green in King's Landing, meanwhile, are fracturing even more. Alicent, as predicted, has descended even deeper into introspection. She takes a trip out into the Kingswood to float in a lake and ponder her future. Otto has gone, plus now Alicent and Gwaine Hightower, along with Kristen Cole and the army. Tyland Lannister has been sent off to treat with the Triarchy. The Red Keep is emptying out. So let's talk about Larys, who is still there. As we noted last time, he has been sidelined by Aemond and is allying himself with the bedbound Aegon. Intriguingly, he tries to get Grandmaster Orwyle to speed up Aegon's recovery because he says it will be long before he may get rest again, so he's not expecting Aegon to be staying in his bed in King's Landing for much longer. Why? Well, as we noted earlier, it's pretty inconceivable that Laris's network hasn't picked up what was happening in the city this episode. Rhaenyra openly recruiting for new dragon riders, and the people's clear hatred of Team Green. He talked Ironrod out of telling Aemond that Seasmoke had a new rider. He has witnessed the open insubordination of Aegon's Lannister allies and the army being sent from King's Landing, and he will have noted Aemond saying he will follow on Vhagar. Basically, Larys is expecting an imminent attack and is not warning Aemond, instead trying to get Aegon back on his feet quickly. Larys may be playing a complex game here, but for now it's clear which member of Team Green he is backing and which he is abandoning. And talking of Aemond, like Daemon, he is perhaps learning that ruling isn't as easy as he'd first thought. The first he hears of this shift in the balance of power is when Silverwing, inexpertly ridden by Ulf, flies over King's Landing. Aemond then flies to Dragonstone to see what's going on and sees all those dragons. He also must now be expecting an attack. Will he stay and fight, or flee? So we're all set for the season finale. Daemon is ready to move on from Harrenhal with his army. Rhaenyra has a massive advantage in the number of dragons. King's Landing is poorly defended, and Aemond is increasingly isolated. I can't wait for episode 8. But what did you think? Let me know in the comments below. Did you know that I also cover The Lord of the Rings on this channel? If you're interested in that, there's a playlist in the middle of your screen now. Or for more on George R. R. Martin's World of Ice and Fire, there's a link on the left of your screen. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.